the way to think of this is a rack of servers in a data center might take 10 kilowatts. And that's for a regular CPU to do cloud. And so that's equivalent of maybe 3 regular normal houses in a single rack, 19-inch wide. A rack of GPUs used to do AI, on the other hand, might be 120 kilowatts, so 12 times that in a single rack. So hot that you can't use air to cool it anymore. You have to use some kind of a liquid, like PG-25, Dow Frost. There's all kinds of different coolants you can use. So that's the equivalent of 30 houses. It's an entire neighborhood in a single rack of power. So it takes a tremendous amount of power to do this. So on one hand, we want to transform society in ways both large and small. On the other, it's going to use a lot of power to do it. In order to make that work, that puts a lot of strain on the electrical power grid. It puts a lot of strain on generation. I think a couple of things are going to happen. 3 things. One is, I think the data center operators are going to have to say, these costs can't be passed on to consumers. Mm-hmm. And I think that is actually the goal of the data center operators and the hyperscalers, that, the utilities aren't really there. The utilities are not operating exactly the way the data center folks want them to. The data center folks don't want, the average consumer doesn't pay 1 penny more. Utilities are really struggling to figure out how to make any of this work. So one thing is, this can't be passed on to consumers. The second is, we're going to need a lot of natural gas power plants, relatively clean natural gas power plants built adjacent to or on data center campuses, so that these data center campuses aren't destabilizing to the electrical power grid. In fact, the opposite. If I'm building a 500 megawatt data center campus and a 700 megawatt natural gas peaking plant right next to it, it can be stabilized to the grid. And I think the third issue is we need to really put a lot of money into developing these small modular nuclear reactors. They're absolutely essential. They're really important. It's going to take 6, 7, 8 years to get these out there. But in terms of changing the world for the better, these SMRs are a zero carbon source of power.